Hello out there in YouTube land. This is Morris, man. As always, I thank you guys for coming to my talk show, Tell It Like It Is. I'm your host, Morris, man, and my co-host,
Joseph Spencer.
Today we're going to do a special topic from one of our subscribers. His subscription name is Calypso Cheech, I believe, and he asked us to speak on a couple of topics. So thanks for, emailing in and, sending your comments to us as far as what you want us to talk about and get our opinions on. And we're going to touch on 3 topics that this particular person wanted us to kind of, put it out there. And the first one, well, first I give you the topics and then we're going to talk about them. The topics are war, violent street gangs, and the third one is interracial dating. So we're going to tackle the war one first. And I'm going to give you my opinion on war. And then I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Joe Spencer. He's going to give you his insight. It's interesting as you get older, you learn and experience more things, and you do a little research and kind of find out what's actual truth and what is just fiction or nonfiction. And of course, unfortunately, there are times our country has to go to war to protect the freedoms of the people in this country, unfortunately. But from my research, and this is just my opinion, the majority of the wars that we fight, we have no business fighting because there's no reason for us to fight. We just like to jump in. And most of us don't realize that war is a big business. Big business. And I think that's first and foremost what it is to the government. It's a business. It's not so much, let's go over there and deal with these guys because they're coming over here dealing with us. But what I found out from some of the research that me and my staff have done was this. First, let me tackle the Vietnam War, which is really the only war on record that we really got our ass kicked. I mean, we really lost that war. We lost a lot of people. What supposedly started that war was there were some ships, some United States ships over in that area, and they were bombed. So that was our declaration to go to war. But come to find out, that incident never even happened. So it was used as an excuse to go to war because we find in this country reasons to go to war. So the Congress can sign off for a declaration of war. And the United citizens, because they want to sell us on this. Yeah, they're trying to deal with us, so yeah, go over there and let's fight. So unfortunately, the Vietnam War should have never been fought because the incident that's supposed to catapult it and start it never actually happened. The bombing of Pearl Harbor, it was acknowledged that high intelligent agencies warned President Roosevelt that the Japanese were coming. Now, this is supposed to be a fact, too, that he didn't do nothing, because, again, we want the reason to go to war. And as a result of that, we lose a lot of people out of this nonsense. We are a pretty intelligent civilization, and we should start acting like that. We're not cavemen. I think that any differences that we have globally, we can deal with. Or we just don't deal with those people at all and just kind of have our own thing within this country and produce everything that we need, so we want to be relying on these other countries and going over there trying to get oil and all that kind of stuff. But that's my take on war, that the majority of these wars are not necessary. They are concocted to go there so we can fight and generate revenue because, again, it's a big money maker. But that's my spill on war. And what's your spill on war?
My spill on war is that the power to be in the United States are Anglo-Saxons, and they're based upon warism. I use that word, warism. It goes all the way back to the ancient Romans, when the Romans control the world. Be taking over other people's space to be the master. So all that stuff is passed down through the Anglos, which are our so-called foreparents. They were Anglo-Saxon. Most of our old beginning of our leaders were English, British. You know, anybody can be English, but you British is the bloodline. So a war is a system of imposing religion and politics on other peoples. And when you impose your religion and politics on other peoples, you're making these people subservient to you and like you. You know, when you make people like you, of you, they're easier to handle because you can understand them because they like you, even though your skin tone and hair and stuff is different. And that money thing, when you have other people's properties, you can do things with their properties that you don't have to do in your own country to pollute the air and the grounds and the waters.
Good point.
You know, the Vietnam War, I was young. I was born into that war, and I didn't go. And I began to read and learn that we had a lot of factories over there, which I didn't know. What can I say? It was a war of that I was born in. The war I was born in '48, and the Vietnam War began in the '50s.
And I actually thought it started in the '60s. Actually.
Me too.
Yeah.
You know,
that was a very long, drawn-out war.
it was a very long, drawn-out war. The French was there. You know, it was open because the people weren't westernized.
Yeah.
You know, the same thing, you know, like the Arabs believe that this is the West they're supposed to attack. But most of the Europeans, those were the Western countries. You know, it dates all the way back to the Holy Wars. You know.
And if I can interject when it comes to war, and then we'll move on to the next topic. And you can, you know, give your last remarks on the war. But what's unfortunate also is the people that usually are called to deal with this or called to war first are the poor people.
Poor people.
And it's like it's the rich people that decides that we're going to do this, but yet those aren't the people that go. Yeah. And even their kids don't go. They usually send them off to college.
Yeah.
And then these people that can't go to college and poor, they end up going to war, fighting, and getting killed.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
During that hippie era when I was young, I went to the Art Institute and I got in the clothing business. And there were white mothers coming to the store, upper middle class and wealthy. They would come into the store and they were buying tons and tons of clothes. And I look at them and go, well, your son? She said, no, my son's birthday, and I'm trying to get my son out of this country. I'm sending him to Paris. Yeah. You know, and in Paris, you can buy yourself out of the military. Did you know that?
Yeah.
You know,
money talks.
Money talks.
And again, that's one reason why, you know, we kind of find ourselves having a bitter taste in our mouth when it comes to that because, you know, unfortunately in this country, the people that end up going and fighting and sometimes losing their lives and giving everything, they're not given a balance here as far as opportunity. But yet they're forced to literally to go there and fight a war that was initiated by rich people here.
And it didn't have anything to do with race neither.
No, it's social status. I mean, if you got money, regardless of what color, you can get out of it.
You can get out of the war.
You can send
or get a passport and send your son off to Paris or Switzerland. You know, I know a lot of young white boys who went to Vietnam because they couldn't afford to get out of it. And we were taught it's your duty. You're not a real man. You see, I had people in World War I and World War II. So I was programmed to believe it was a man's thing, and it was the duty to your country.
And again, you know,
John Wayne and all that.
There are some situations that warrant that we have to do this. That's the last alternative, and we don't want to do it. But yeah, there are times and situations that we have to go to war to save
have to go
things.
right now.
Yeah. Okay, welcome back to the next section or segment of this show, and the topic at this point is interracial dating. I'm going to give you my spill on it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and Joe's going to give you his insight. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you know, I'm not a racist person. I'm not a prejudiced person. I think that if two people are in love, the color of their skin should not matter. You know, it really shouldn't. But unfortunately, in this society, in some cases, it does. And I'm going to give you an example of how sometimes when you talk about this particular topic, it kind of takes an ugly spin. And I'm going to give you an example. And I'm going to use this person as an example. Not picking on nobody, but Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones, his entire adult life, has dated nothing but white women. And basically what Quincy Jones is saying to black women is, you're not good enough for me. And that leaves a sour taste in not only black women's mouth, but everybody's. Because, you know, again, if you're in love with somebody and they just happen to be a different color, it's not a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. But I think sometimes what happens, there's an underlying undercurrent, and that is financial status. I think that's the bottom line, because I'm gonna say this. A lot of these black athletes, if these guys were working a minimum wage job, a lot of these white women wouldn't bother them, and vice versa. I'm not picking on the white women, but there are a lot of black women that wouldn't date certain white guys if they didn't have certain status.
Right.
So unfortunately, all this stuff gets factored in when it shouldn't be a factor at all. It should be just, I happen to love you and enjoy your time, being time with you, and you just happen to be another color. That's what it should be about, but unfortunately, it's not. So
Well, some instances there are people you you have differences in races, and you are attracted to each other. It has nothing to do with money. It has something to do with youth and fantasy. The average white woman is trained or have knowledge of the fantasy of a black man, and black men have fantasies of white women. When I was younger, I didn't seek out white girls. They were just there because I'm an artist. And like musicians, artists, football players, they around white women.
Yeah.
Because
and let me just say this, because and I'm not picking on anybody, but I'm trying to create a balance as far as different perspectives. And here it is. I mean, this is the realization of it. You happen to be a very fortunate young black man, and you become an athlete. You have the ability to become a professional athlete. And when you go to that level, you are around a lot of predominantly white people.
Right.
So it's only natural that you most likely will be dating people within your circle.
Right.
And I just want to make a point of that, because if you are poor and struggling in the hood, you're most likely going to end up with somebody struggling in the hood too. If you're a middle class person or upper class person, you can probably end up with a middle class or upper class person.
May they be white or black.
Exactly.
I've seen poor white guys date poor white girls.
Exactly.
And black girls.
Right.
I've seen poor black brothers date poor white girls.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
And the average brother who get a scholarship on a football scholarship and go to some of the best schools in the United States, who's going to be at these schools?
Exactly. Yeah. And we don't think about that unless we are aware of it or been experiencing that ourselves, because there's some people that have not lived outside of their little circle.
Right.
They don't know what's outside that circle, and they make opinions based on what they know, which is nothing.
Yeah. And once you get on campus, there's a different world that opens up.
Exactly. And when you work in corporate America, you interact with a lot of different people from different races, as opposed to, I work down the street at the burger joint.
Right.
Most likely the people in the burger joint are the same color as you are,
Right.
the
And
same
people coming
social
in.
status.
Right.
So
this is true.
So that's why you see a lot of that. Why is that rich athlete black guy with that white woman, or vice versa?
Right.
Not picking or taking sides. But I'm trying to give you both scenarios on both sides. But normally that's why what you see is what you see, or why you see it.
Right.
So.
Right. And it's just not. I've had met young black women, back in the '60s and '70s, and I'm quite sure they actually go out looking for wealthy white men and wealthy Jews.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the Quincy Jones thing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm kind of focused on this and everything outside of that, And again, to each his own. Quincy Jones have every right to choose whoever he wants, and we're not giving him a hard time. But again, we have to be conscious of not building up one group while we're tearing down another group at the same time. If you can create some type of balance to say, well, this is just my choice, and I'm not waving a banner to say, get away, black women, but this is just my choice. There's nothing wrong with that.
Being in the United States or going traveling, you have opportunities to date all different kind of races of people. Myself personally, I've had Chinese girls. I've even dated an Arab girl, which is unheard of. I've had Puerto Rican girls. All Chinese, Japanese.
Yeah. It depends on your social circle.
Right. Right.
Yeah, your financial and your social circle. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic, because we don't want to spend a lot of time on any of these, because we could actually do that. Actually, it could be a whole show centered around these three separate topics. But here's the next session. Well, get ready for the next session. Thanks for watching. And the last topic is gang violence. And again, I'll go first. I've said it on a few other talk shows that we had as far as, why things happen and the root cause as opposed to dealing with the surface issue. And I'm going to say this first, and then I'm going to go into it briefly and turn it over to you. In Chicago, because I still have friends and family there, and they keep me abreast of what's going on out there. And I think about maybe 2 weeks ago, a bunch of leaders came to Chicago, ministers and other people, a pillar of the society, showed up to put together a summit and try to, figure out a way to stop this violence. And they had the nerve to basically say this. So this is what they said that they were coming to do. We're going to basically get the brown the gangbangers up and sit around the table and talk to them and say, please stop killing. You see, you see Joe's reaction. I didn't tell him what I was going to say, but that's my reaction too. It's a joke. Because the problem is, if it was that easy, it would have been done a long time ago. The problem is this, and this is the reason why we gave birth to the show, to tell it like it is. The problem is this. We got too many young kids having sex in their parents' house, and then 17 years later from that, those kids go out and start doing what they're doing. Again, I stress it's not all of them that are in that situation, but that's the root cause. The family structure has gone to hell, just gone. When I was growing up, my mom and dad met each other, fell in love, got married, and had kids. I was one of those. Mm-hmm. Same thing for you. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, a large percent of these young women, and I'm not picking on the women because it takes two to tango, it's the men's fault too. They get together with these people in their teens, having sex casually in their mom's house, having babies, and these guys ain't long-term. They're not going to be husbands or long-term partners. And then the offspring goes out there and can create mayhem in the society. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. You could take, again, all the guns off the street tomorrow. They just going to knife you to death. Mm-hmm. Take the knives away, they're going to beat you to death. Mm-hmm. So until we fix that problem of the family structure that just deteriorated, it's going to continue to have gang violence and young guys out there shooting each other like they lost their mind.
When you have a group of young men who have masculinity problems, if you don't have a male in the household to teach them what masculine is,
they learn from the streets.
They learn from the street,
yeah.
Period. And then when these kids start having kids, and their influence is a hostile, masculine role model, yeah. You ain't no man because you won't shoot somebody in the head or cut somebody's throat. You a punk. See, I was brought up a punk because I didn't want that violence.
Right. You were smart, but they thought you were being a punk and stupid.
I was being punk
and half
stupid.
of those guys now in jail are dead.
Oh, either dead, right.
Exactly.
Or to spend 40 years in jail. When I was a kid, I was having problems with some brothers in the neighborhood. And I had a friend who lived on 43rd, 42nd in Princeton. He was older than me. And I was complaining about it. And he said, hey, little brother, this is what you need. And he put a gun in my hand. They ain't gonna fuck with you now. And I took the gun, and by the time I got home and went down in the basement and examined it, something in my head said, you're going to jail.
For a long time.
For a long time.
And even when you go for a short time, your life for the most part is almost over because it's bad enough in this country as people of color to be productive when they go through the legitimate stages of going to school, doing the right things, not going to jail. It's already going to be a challenge then. But when you add the felonies, the court cases, you can forget about it. You're going to be frying chicken for the rest of your life. And again, I'm not picking on people that fry chicken, but the point I'm making is...
they make fun. A lot of people make gangbangers. He work in the chicken shack.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that...
He always smell like chicken.
Unfortunately, now the chances of you being productive is very slim.
Very slim.
So we have to be very careful about the choices that we make and the dumb things that we do. But again, I think this whole gun gang violence thing can be wrapped up basically by let's try to go back to the way. I know we can't change the time, go back to change the hands of time, but we can try to instill in these young kids to say, hey, I know you children, you don't understand. We've been there, done that. Trust us. We know what we're talking about. Hold off on having the kids until you get out your mama's house and fall in love with somebody and they want to be a long-term partner to you. And you nourish and take care of your kid, your child together instead of you gone being the male. You left your girlfriend and raised the baby with grandmama because grandmama's the new surrogate daddy these days in the black community, So
if you see that, if you can see that.
Yeah. So until we go back and try to analyze this, try to fix it or deter these kids from making these mistakes that last a lifetime, nothing's going to change. You know, it's
Social
going to
media
continue.
hurt too. The music, movies hurt a lot of kids.
Of course,
When you
it
stop-
always has.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse, you know, because now I look at, and I'm a grown man, I'm watching cable and I'm cringing at some of the violent scenes and some of the sexual scenes. I'm like, I don't need to see all this, you know?
No, you don't need to see it.
I mean, now
Especially
you see,
12, 13, when you go into puberty, you don't need to see it.
yeah, I mean, now you see full frontal nudity. You see back nudity. I mean, they don't leave nothing to the imagination like in the
Nothing to-
60s or
right.
the 50s where they got a towel on or a shirt
Or
on.
even the
it's not-
70s.
You looking at nipples. I mean, you looking at
this
nipples.
is grown folk stuff, and it runs so deep. When you see a young man with a T-shirt with Al Capone on it, and he's black,
Yeah.
I said, you know, yeah, Big Al is my hero.
Yeah, well, Al's been a hero for some reason. He's like anti-hero.
You know, no, and I look at this kid. That's, well, did you know that a nigga couldn't do nothing for Al Capone but shine his shoes?
Well, they've been...
You got to be kidding. I said, you don't know the background
Yeah,
of
they
this
don't
man?
back up. Because here's an interesting story. I'll try to make it short. Watching the Brady Bunch when I was a kid, and there was an episode where the little character Bobby Brady was infatuated with Billy the Kid, you know, because they glamorized him in this TV show, and he's walking around with little toy guns, and his dad got concerned. So his dad went and found somebody who knew of him,
Yeah.
and he brought him to the house, and he said, talking to, you know, Bobby, you know, his Mr. Brady's son, and he said, Mr. Bobby was like, this is my hero. And he said, well, he's not my hero. I said, why not, mister? Because, now I forgot his name.
Billy the Kid.
Billy the Kid, thank you. Billy the Kid shot and killed my father. So it's interesting that you bring that up, that here is the facts and here is the fantasy.
Yeah.
And, you know.
And kids are full of fantasy.
And these young kids are sold the fantasy package when here's the reality package that these people were cold-blooded murderers.
Yeah.
You know, wasn't nothing cool about them at all.
They had Peter Pan for us, you know, and things like Zorro and the Lone Ranger, all the little hero stuff, you know. But you can grow out of that. But if you have bombardment, for instance, I had I was in Chicago. I'm leaning on my fence, and a kid I knew was standing there, and we were talking. And he pulls out, he lights up a joint and stuff. He said, "Hey man, hey Joe, how you been?" So I've been all right. What's up with you? Man, I really feel like shooting somebody. I said, what do you mean? You feel? Yeah, man, I feel like shooting somebody. I said, you got a gun? Yeah, man, I got a gun. I said, well, do you feel like shooting me? No, Joe, I know you. You know, I just feel like shooting somebody. I said, look, why don't you give me that weapon, man? No, I can't do that. I need it. So why do you need this gun? Because I feel like shooting somebody. So man, please give me the gun before and I never saw him again.
Yeah.
You know, and I could see the mentality in his head, that power thing.
Yeah.
And he just had to use this weapon.
And there are a lot of kids throughout our youth, because I'm sure you just shared this story with us, and thank you. I got many of those types of stories too. Used to be a guy that used to live across the street from me, and he was just bad news. And this guy was a teenager, like 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Had a temper out of this world, the temper of a grown man. For some reason, like, why are you so bitter at the world at 15? And it wasn't like he was being treated badly at home, because he was more or less kind of a middle-class neighborhood, a middle-class family structure. But there was just something about this guy. And long story short, he had a bunch of run-ins with people, and one day he shot himself in the head. He was playing with a gun, Russian roulette. I don't understand why people play that dumb game, but he was sitting around with a bunch of other idiots, and they were passing the gun around, boom, and he shot himself.
There's a masculinity thing with guns.
Yeah.
There's a when I was a kid, I was in love with swords and the Vikings and the knights of the round table.
But it's kind of different, but you were like trying to be like a hero.
Right.
You weren't sticking yourself with the sword or
no.
sticking a gun to your head.
No.
You know, but there's some people that are just reckless, and you have no understanding the reason why. I mean, again, you can look at some people and tell based on their background, yeah, this guy ain't number trouble. But for some reason, there's some people that didn't have that background, but they just got out of control.
We have middle class kids, two 12-year-olds just kill people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And back to the sword thing, when I began to realize that swords They just as terrible as guns. They take off limbs and take people's
They
heads
take
off.
your whole head off.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean,
the other
so
countries they use the swords to chop
Yeah.
your head off and kill you.
cut you in half. And when I older, I got it. Well, damn, this is not a game.
It's not a game.
I have a young friend, and he told me he took fencing lessons. I said, well, good. I said, well, that's a dangerous weapon. He looked at me and said, well, fencing sword, it's a sport. And I looked at him and said, no, foils are weapons. No, they're not. It's a sport. I said, when you take that little tip off that sword, you can literally, and he didn't know. He saw this as just these things.
Because it's been marketed and sold to
Right.
him as a sport.
And he loved it. And he's doing, Joe, are you sure? I said, man, these were weapons of war and destruction.
Yeah.
I said, the Europeans carried them little thin blades, foils, and rapiers around them to kill people, to run people through.
Yeah. But let's wrap this up. My last closing remarks is, again, basically, until we analyze and try to get back on track as far as the family structure, whether it's the black or white or whatever, we're going to continue to have young guys out in the street, 16 years old, driving by shooting people.
Right.
So until we deal with that and try to fix that problem, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, well, you gotta teach kids the reality and not the fantasy, and separate being what masculine really is and being a murderer.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Well, on that note, hope this was a very informative and educational topic or show. And until next time, keep thinking. My name again is Morris Mann, and my co-host,
Joseph Spencer.
thanks for coming. Keep thinking.
Be blessed.